All right, this is what Kevin Durant's tenure to date has been with the Brooklyn Nets. How about 90 total games played in the regular season? That includes the first season where there was 0 because he was recovering from the Achilles. So if you just count the last 2 seasons, he's just averaged 45 games a season played during the regular campaign at just about 29 points a game, better than 7 rebounds and 6 assists, 53, 41, and 90-year splits with regard to the shooting. He's a great player. Just needs to be on the floor more, and will he be on the floor ever again in a Brooklyn Nets uniform? All right, let's welcome in CBS NBA analyst Bill Reiter. And Bill, as we reach week 2 since the Kevin Durant trade request, I'm still trying to figure out why he wants out. I'd like to think he wants to get out of the business of Kyrie Irving and focus on his career and winning a title again. The Nets are said to want a king's ransom for KD, and you can understand why. This will define Sean Marks' tenure as Brooklyn GM. If you're in that front office, how would you proceed moving forward regarding conversations with other interested teams?
Yeah, Jim, if I'm Sean Marks, if I'm the general manager of this Nets organization, in which I gave away all of my depth, all of my young players to bring in Kevin Durant and to pair him with Kyrie Irving and then to bring in James Harden, I'm absolutely putting my foot down. I understand. We all know where Kevin Durant wants to go. He's leaked that. He wants to be a Sun. He wants to be a member of the Miami Heat, the 2 teams that won the East and the Western Conference last year. That's cool. I want to be 6'5" and able to dunk. Life doesn't always give you what you want. To answer your question, I'm requiring a massive return. I'm telling Kevin Durant, and this isn't probably realistically the outcome, Jim, because players have the power in the NBA, and no GM has put their foot down since the player empowerment movement made it possible to not just demand your way out of a contract you're under, but to tell guys where you want to go. But I'm going to buck that trend. I'm going to say to KD, you want to use and throw your weight around, do it to go get a massive haul and return somewhere you want to be, because short of that, what is a remarkable return that gives us value on you having 4 years left on your deal? You're not moving. You can be here. You can be miserable. You're not Ben Simmons. You're not going to sit out. You love the game too much. You care about your legacy. I'll dare you to go on strike.
Yeah, that makes total sense, Bill. So Durant, as you mentioned, has informed the Nets the Suns and Heat are his preferred destinations. If the Nets don't want restricted free agent DeAndre Ayton, you'd have to think they would need another team or two to jump in to appease Brooklyn's big demands. As you compose hypothetical deals regarding one with the Suns, how might that look?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the DeAndre Ayton piece is the obvious one that you might think would bring value, but you have to want to have a standard center. So let's go to the Pacers. That's a team that's in a rebuild mode. There's a sense out there talking to folks. They might view DeAndre Ayton as a max or near max guy. So I think it's a trade where the Pacers move on from Miles Turner. It'll be multiple first-round picks that certainly go to the Nets. Kevin Durant goes to the Suns, and then DeAndre Ayton ends up in Indiana. Maybe Bridges is a part of that deal too. And again, there's other first-round picks that are probably part of the deal. But in order to make this happen, you got to have a team that A, values DeAndre Ayton at a high level, and B, has the cap space to do that, because you're hard capped if you bring in a guy in a sign-and trade, which Ayton would require. So you're talking a team like the Spurs, a team like the Pacers, maybe Orlando, and it just feels like the Pacers are a team that have a vision for a future that doesn't include some of the pieces they have, so they can send some guys out as part of a deal, and they got the cap space to make it work. If they value Ayton as a near max guy.
Yeah, and those first-round picks have to be plentiful, maybe a lot more than 2, and unprotected. So the defending champs, KD's former team, the Warriors, have interest as well, and why wouldn't they? Golden State does have young pieces, which they could couple with a bevy of picks. What might a trade with Durant's former team look like, Bill?
I would love to take credit for this trade, but I actually got it from an NBA scout when we thought Kyrie was going to go first and then Durant might force his way out. It looks exactly what you see on the screen. It's Jordan Poole, it's Andrew Wiggins, it's Kuminga, it's Wiseman. I love Kuminga as a future player, and it's multiple first-round picks. Now, the trick of this is, and with a lot of the trades that could happen, that in order to execute this, Brooklyn would have to move on from Ben Simmons. I don't think that's an impossibility, but you can acquire 2 players via trade that are on the designated rookie extension, which is the case for both Wiggins and is the case for Ben Simmons. So it's not just a matter of pulling off the trade and convincing KD to swallow that massive amount of pride that's dictated, I think, so many of his decisions. You also got to move on from Simmons, but that's a kind of return that I think, if you can make it work, works for everybody. Again, KD may not want to do it, but it's a cheat code for the Warriors to keep winning championships. And I think it's a lot of pieces that have real value for that Nets organization.
Yeah, maybe you find a taker for Wiggins and keep Simmons, but again, we're talking hypotheticals. Let's keep in mind, though, Bill, the Rudy Gobert trade, which ultimately yielded five first-round picks to the Jazz. And consider this. This is Kevin Durant we're talking about. While teams like the Raptors are resistant to include a player like Scotty Barnes, or the Pelicans might not want to include a player like Brandon Ingram, we're talking about Kevin Durant. So these teams need to pony up. Now, one team you're going to throw in the hopper is the Atlanta Hawks. They just added DeJounte Murray to team with Trae Young. But under your hypothetical deal, those two would never suit up together, right?
Yeah, they would swap for each other. And I've actually run this by some sources around the NBA because this is my personal pet project. I love it. And they actually think that the Hawks and Travis Schlenk, who runs basketball operations there, would be hesitant to give away a player like Trae Young because of how young he is for Kevin Durant, despite how great KD is, because KD's, 34 in September. And that's why I think it could work. The numbers work perfectly. You put Kevin Durant on that team. John Collins sticks around. Everyone knows Trae Young, John Collins don't work well together in terms of just their chemistry, their personality. You've already got Murray. That is an automatic championship contending team. And you give that Nets organization a player in Trae Young you can build around. And I'll add this, Jim, and this is based on reporting, but I don't have it locked down. There's just a general question out there. Not a sense, not a fact. I'm a big Trae Young fan personally. But there's a sense and a worry out there that Trae Young maybe doesn't capitalize on his talent the way that he should. He doesn't move off the ball particularly effectively like, say, a Steph Curry. His work rate when he doesn't have the ball is not great. We've seen time where he gives up on some plays. And this is a team, a Hawks team, that outside of one stretch 2 seasons ago post-All-Star game doesn't play a lot of defense, don't put a lot of effort in. That's often a locker room leadership problem. And so I've got sources in the NBA who have just speculated to me maybe Trae Young's lack of maturity so far, his inability to be the leader he needs to be, and he can grow out of that. Maybe that's actually a bigger problem in Atlanta than we know, and maybe it's an addition by subtraction in the sense you get Kevin Durant in. You don't have to worry about Trae Young growing into the player, the fully rounded player and leader you need him to be. You just go with Murray and Durant, that core of young guys, and you compete.
Yeah, you got to wonder, though, if Kevin Durant is kind of tired of the leadership deal, and that's why he prefers the Suns. Let CP3 be the leader there and let Kevin Durant focus on playing basketball. But, Bill, you touched on this at the outset. Then there's the option of simply keeping him, listening to all the offers, and ultimately deciding that none of them are good enough to move a player who has 4 years left on his contract. I would think Kyrie Irving would be a headache to keep. The Nets would ultimately tell him, stay home. But Durant's a pro, and if Marks and Joe Tsai told him, we tried, but none of the deals are in our best interest, so we'll expect you to play as a Net this coming season, what might that response be, and how realistic is that scenario?
So this will shock you, Jim, to hear that the real challenge to this plan is a guy named Kyrie Irving, who seems to be the problem to every single challenge and every single dilemma in Brooklyn. Here's the problem. I think it can work in a vacuum if Kyrie Irving shows up, but the Nets have experienced the fact that for a variety of reasons, and I'm not just talking his unwillingness to get vaccinated against COVID, we're talking before that, he's just willing to not show up for work. I mean, Kyrie Irving, we know Ben Simmons will do it. Kyrie Irving will do it too. It's his sister's birthday. I'm going to take 6 weeks off. These are actually things that have happened. And so the problem becomes that if you force a group of players to be there who don't want to be there, I think Durant shows up. He's a pro. He loves the game. He wants to win. I think there's a real concern that Kyrie Irving doesn't do that, and you can't win with just KD and a questionable Ben Simmons, and you can't get enough for Kyrie to put it around Durant and win in the short term. You can get some players from the Lakers, maybe, but you have to take on that Westbrook contract. You can't put Westbrook and KD on a team together, so that's a nightmare. So I think the problem, actually, to your point, I think it's a good one, is that Kyrie Irving is, again, this hurdle I'm not sure they can clear in that scenario. Yeah.
You'd like to think. I wonder, though, Bill, if Kyrie opted out and went mid-level with the Lakers, if that would have been a better scenario for the Nets overall, because they can just be done with him, and maybe KD would be done with him as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's interesting because if KD wants out because we don't know, because he's frustrated on Kyrie's behalf and they're in this together, then at least with Kyrie, you can try to get a kind of a return and pressure the Lakers to try to send those first-round picks your direction as part of taking the Westbrook contract. But I think you're absolutely right. The time has shown us that as talented as he is, and he's talented, Kyrie Irving is literally a net negative. Teams lose more than they win when he's on the floor since he left Cleveland. That is just a fact. And maybe, and it's a maybe, maybe there's more of an opportunity to convince Kevin Durant that he wants to be there. But I think in the end, whatever the details behind the scene, the well has been poisoned there. Kyrie has certainly been a part of that. It was a miserable experience, largely because of Kyrie, or at least in part. And Kevin Durant, whether you think this is worthy of criticism or not, doesn't want to see it through, isn't interested in the difficulties that have been created, and wants to go somewhere else as a result.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair to say that. And I also think that Kyrie is an all-time, and you're in lockstep with this, an all-time team wrecker. There's no player in any sport,
no
bar
doubt.
none, better than Kyrie at wrecking teams. Our thanks.
100%.
Our thanks to Bill Reiter. Bill, it's always a pleasure. All right, here's what it looks like right now. Keep in mind, Kevin Durant's status is still uncertain. Odds to win the title. The Celtics actually have better odds than the Warriors, the team that beat them for this past NBA title. The Suns right there. The Nets a plus 2,000. That will change one way or the other once KD departs.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.